the trinity of masculine excellence, your mind, heart, and soul. Understanding how all three of these components within you have a purpose, and they're actually going to be the reason as to how you can find meaning, how you can pretty much stop getting confused, stagnant, bitter, angry, resentful towards yourself, towards the world, and finally actually enter into kingship, a place where you are now sovereign, in charge, moving forward with your life without feeling like you're sabotaging everything that you do. Starting with the mind, which is of the masculine realm, strategy, planning, preparation, execution. This is the faculty that actually gets things moving forward, where you plan your daily schedule. You plan your couple months in advance as to how you're going to execute your marketing strategy or your transition from one career to the next. It is the grounding of your theoretical plan. Moving into the heart, which is the more feminine side of you, the compassionate, the charitable. This is the part of you that provides warmth, and also at times where masculine can be very callous and cutthroat, is not always the right approach depending on the person, depending on the circumstance. So you have to be able to also channel in that more softer, feminine side, which has such a bad rap because you've had a lot of bad actors who portray the shadow side of the feminine. So it just gives the whole thing a bad rap. But in reality, it is absolutely crucial to keeping your humanity. But if we move to this, one of the most important things, which is the soul, the transcendent experience. Within you, I know all of us feel it, a sense of divine calling. It is an irrational experience of a pulling force that draws you towards something important or grand, or a mission that you haven't yet solidified as to what it is, but you're being almost pressured into moving in that direction. In the modern world, we lack this aspect. We've pretty much sort of just casted it as a problem, or it's been hyper fixated into doctrine, which again, it's a way for that energy to channel through. And when I mean by doctrine, I mean just the religious practices today. It's a way for that medium to pass through, which is fine, but we often get hyper fixated and rigid in doctrine, or we just will completely suppress that energy altogether, deeming it just mumbo jumbo and it's just nonsense. But what you need to see to really open everything up is the contrast of how this can turn against you, how the mind, the heart, and the soul can cause your demise. And if you do not know how they intermingle, is going to be the biggest reason why you stagnate and get nothing done. Now, for those of you who are heavy on the mind, you'll run into challenges with overthinking, planning, and just keeping the thoughts running 24/7. The what if scenarios, the hypotheticals, what could go wrong, what could go right. Just a nonstop theater in your mind, perhaps through images or through words. Either way, it is dominating you, and you pretty much feel a consistent state of anxiety and stress. You can also struggle with perfectionism, having the inability to actually finish a project because you need to endlessly sharpen everything, make sure it is absolutely to the standard of either something you've set or you have been given, somebody that has imprinted onto you the standard of perfection. Endless planning, gets stuck in the constant state of adjusting the strategy, making sure it's just right, being afraid that if you launch it, it's going to fail. So you want to make sure it is absolutely crystal clear, guaranteed to win before you do absolutely anything. If you move into the heart now, what is the downside of an over-feminized, overly identified heart? You'll avoid conflict. You'll have a difficulty embracing that level of challenge. Delaying the hard choices. And I mean hard choices that require maybe perhaps a little bit of emotional distancing. You're going to have to upset some people, especially if you're in a leadership role or you want to be in a leadership role. Or better yet, in order for you to actually take charge of your life, that is a leadership role that will require hard decisions. And if you over-identify with these traits, then you're going to just push it off. You're going to push off saying what you need to say, doing what you need to do, which then also what? Keeps you small so that you can be liked. And this is something that I personally have had struggle with. And there are clients that I deal with all the time who have the exact same struggle, where they don't want to ask for the promotion, or they have a difficult time asking for money from their clients because they just feel bad and they don't want to upset anybody. They don't want to cause a wake in the water. They want to keep everything nice and smooth. But in doing that, what's the result? You are just constantly suppressing your power. And for those that are over dominant in the soul, well, you're going to find no execution skills, because this feeling, although very powerful, the transcendent experience, it is very lofty. It can be very come and go. And if you just completely obsess over it, you will lose your executional skills because it needs to feel right. Or in other words, you need to wait for the right time. Everything needs to be in alignment before I execute what I'm supposed to do, which really is spiritual bypassing. Using this sort of vague realm, this hard to pin down experience, as the reason why you can't move forward. It makes you avoid emotions that you have to deal with. It makes you avoid the conversations that you need to have, or the paper that you need to place on your desk and start actually writing out what you're going to do starting right now to live out the life that you want. And the biggest thing that I have noticed consistently in men is not only not understanding the challenges and the contrast between its positive and its negative side, but how they all relate to each other. Because imagine this: if you had a lack, or rather a suppressed soul calling, you don't dive into it, then you will have to rely on the mind, which will then get things moving. You might have the business that you want, but you will feel this vacancy. You will feel like you're doing this for what? You're just this mechanical being waking up, making some money, or making new contacts, and feeling like none of this matters. And you just have to use a forced motivation. You have to just grind forward, which again is a fine muscle to use. But when done too much, zaps you of color, just turns you bland. And now if you overemphasize with the heart, it is simply chaos. You will have to mental gymnastics everything to make it make sense. Because dealing with the reality, perhaps, that you're not who you should be, you're falling short of your potential. These blunt, realities can be heavy to take, and an overemphasis on that feminine will leave you in the state of absolute chaos, and you have to just say anything to yourself to avoid it. But then deep down that is causing nothing but distress, will completely contaminate the soul calling, will completely ruin it, and you'll have no real direction as to where to go. All of these work in harmony. It's a straight line. When you unlock and you clear up the clutter, then all these can work in unison. Now watch this chain reaction, because the next phase is going to explain a lot. Hopefully you can see me on camera for this last part, because I'm going to have to kind of move off to the side and the lens totally blocks the screen where I can at least see where I am. Look at the final outcome. When we are unaware of how these dynamics function, that they can lead to perfectionism traps. They can lead to being a momentum killer. When you start to notice things that might be going well, but then all of a sudden either external forces or you yourself interrupt and break what you've been doing. People pleasing, unable to stand up for yourself in the fear that you might lose friends. Perhaps you've been lonely. Perhaps you've had an upbringing where it was very conditional love, I mean. Shame-driven loops, the part of you that feels constantly that you are less than and you need to be overly charitable, be a martyr. I can even put a martyr complex in there as well. For those who over-identify with the soul and not understand how they function, this can lead to identity conflicts, not knowing who you are because you haven't grounded anything yet. This can also lead to an imposter complex because unless you put it into action, see the skills that you need to build and actually move towards that, then you are always going to have this feeling like you're not the right guy for that spot because you were only following this irrational, unexplainable force within you. Now stay with me for this last bit because now we're going to quickly touch on how you can access this part of you if you haven't before, and the same with the heart and the same with the soul. This so you can actually start implementing something and moving forward. For the mind, plan your day. Spend some time, block out some chunks of 3 hours or 2 hours. Again, it doesn't have to be minute by minute, that you can actually organize and see what you're supposed to do throughout the day. So you can exercise that muscle. Prepare ahead of time. Maybe you can do it the day before, where you plan out your week to see what appointments you have to go to, what responsibilities you have to meet. You want to also practice compartmentalizing a little bit, because if you can separate momentarily from what you're doing with the emotion that you feel, is going to at least give you a little bit more exercise in clarity. Because when you involve emotion into everything and you overlap it, then it will just blur judgment and, again, create a lot more chaos than you need. And if you're someone who has a more blocked heart, give your time away to people. Be charitable with your time. Maybe that is in teaching. Maybe that is providing service to people for free. Whatever it is, give it away. Because when you give it away, at first there's going to be that tendency to be a little selfish. You're going to say, why the hell am I doing this? I should be charging, or I got better things to do. But in doing these actions, you'll meet different people. You'll meet people that will test your patience, but you'll meet those who are so grateful. So their stories will blow you away. And there's never been a time where I've given my time away, I'm repeating the same word 100 million times, that it's always been a regret. It's always paid off. Get in touch with all range of emotion. The masculine, we tend to always get stuck on just a couple of them: anger, frustration, because anger at least gives you a sense of control and movement and inertia, but you have to access all ranges. Sad, happy, joy, of course, anger, so on and so forth, disgust, not so that you can penalize and be angry or reject them, but just understand this is the part of the human range. We all have it, and you need to respect each one of them and know their role. Allow yourself to feel things. Oftentimes, if there are emotions flooding in that are feeling maybe perhaps a little more sensitive, we want to squash it. Perhaps it makes us feel weak. It doesn't make you feel weak. It isn't a black or white thing. Now, when you get to the soul, when I say read scripture, I'm not saying, lock in, pick a religion, but I'm saying you just read a wide range of them. See the text and see how it's written, how it makes you feel. Look at art from old. The art from the past 100% has a different experience to it when you actually look. It just captured something we don't really have that much anymore. Pay attention when you're alone, when you're sitting by yourself. And if you're not ever doing that, practice doing that. And pay attention to your center. Generally speaking, I find it to be, and not just myself, but the people I work with, in my center gut area. Pay attention to what it feels like. It'll almost be like a humming, a buzzing feeling that if you tune into will bring forward creativity, a sense of excitement, perhaps even some ideas as to what you've been doing and maybe things that you got to clear up in your life. But don't be afraid of doing that. And then you have to practice faith. And that's one of the hardest things, is that this experience of soul requires faith. You have to have faith that whatever it's calling you to do will be something worthwhile at the end. And you don't really know that. But that's part of what it takes to be courageous, to be brave and dare to see the outcome. And if you practice all three, if we go back to that pyramid, the trinity of masculine excellence, the goal is to maintain yourself at that center. Every once in a while, you will deviate perhaps to one or the other, depending on the season of your life. But overall, staying smack dab in the middle, having the ability and the skill to access every single range, places you into the archetype of kingship, the one who is creating borders, safety, order, but then also is compassionate to its people. Gives sometimes irrational empathy because it is sometimes necessary. It is. And then moves its people forward, envisions a life, not just through their own imagination, but a connection to something bigger than them. And in my personal opinion, this is the evolution of the red pill, of this manosphere that's been growing out of resentment from being suppressed and having the masculine energy be deemed as terrible. And this is what causes a lot of the self-sabotage. And if you are watching this and you're resonating with it and you need a little bit more help, down below I got links. I have a free guide you can download. It goes more in depth with ways you can clear up the clutter within yourself, find the patterns that keep you stuck, and be able to channel that energy within you that you know you can use to move yourself forward. Thank you very much. I'll see you guys in the next one.